Hi everybody, I'm Cindy and today I'm going to show you how to make a face mask. So we're going to start with a pattern. You're going to need construction paper and a plate. You have a plate or a top for your pots at home and we can start. So with your plate or top, it has to be 11 inches. So you grab your ruler, you measure it, 11 inches. I'm gonna draw a circle. All right, and we're gonna cut this circle out. Alrighty. All right, so now you have your circle and it's cut. We're gonna fold it in half. All right, and then we're gonna fold it one more time. Again. All right. So now that you folded your construction paper, we're going to take our ruler and we're going to measure 1.6 inches from the bottom to the top. I'm going to draw a little line. And right there, you draw your line. And then we're going to move to the right side and it's going to be 3.1 inches. So it's 3.1, it's right there. You draw a little line. All right. So I'll write how many you need here, 1.6, and here is 3.1 inches. So now we're gonna grab our plate again. We're gonna connect both lines with the plate. So from here to here, you're gonna draw like half of a circle. It's gonna connect to the lines. All right, so now we're gonna cut on the line that we just drew. You're gonna open it and you're gonna have your pattern for your mask. All right. So now we're gonna have this pretty fabric and we're gonna turn it inside out. I'm gonna fold it. Now we're gonna grab our pattern, which I already had made, and we're gonna trace everything on here. We don't need to do that one. Okay, so for this fabric, I'm gonna use white chalk so I can see my outline. You can use a white crayon, or if you have chalk, you can use chalk as well. And just make sure you can see your pattern so you can cut it evenly. The reason the pattern is inside out is so it can cut evenly on both sides. And that way we don't have to do any turning around or anything like that. So now that our pattern is outlined, we're gonna cut it. You can use two things. I use a rotary blade. If you use a rotary blade, just make sure you have a healing mat underneath so you don't mess up your blade. Or you can just use trusty scissors and cut it that way. So here we go. I just use this because it's just so much easier to cut the fabric out, as you're gonna be able to see from here. Pattern out. Got that. And I just like it because the fabric stays together. So for my masks, I always make sure I get 100% cotton. That's just me. And as an added protection, I started adding lining to my mask. So it's non-woven, fusible, featherweight lining. And like I said, it's just extra protection. So we're gonna go ahead and cut the pattern out. So one thing I forgot to mention, with this lining, you don't have to double it like we did with the cotton lining, with the cotton fabric. This is just one side, okay? And this lining, you can find it in any hobby store. So, you know, any fabric store, you can just walk in and you can ask if they have the lining, fusible lining. And like I said, it's just extra protection. And that's what we all want, right? So when your lining is cut, you're gonna fold it in half. Make sure it's in half, and you're gonna cut it right in the middle. I'm gonna line it here with my lines. All right, and now we're gonna get our fabric. So now that we have our fabric, we're gonna get the iron. Because remember I said this is fusible lining, so it's gonna fuse to the cotton fabric that we have here. And it's always, there's a bumpy side and there's a silky side. What you're gonna iron down is the bumpy part is gonna go on your fabric, as so. Let's see if this is hot, yeah. So we're gonna preheat the fabric. It's nice and warm, so then the bumpy side on the bottom, put it on your mask, make sure it's lined up correctly, and it is. And then we're just gonna let it sit there for a little bit, let it fuse. I like letting it sit for a little bit. Make sure you get it. You'll notice when it's fused, not yet. So now our lining is good. Now we're gonna flip it to the following side, the same side as this side that you used. Remember the bumpy side? Let's preheat our fabric. Bumpy side down. So now we're gonna start the sewing process. Remember, keep these together. If you need pins, please go ahead and use them. Sometimes I use them just to make sure that the fabric is gonna stay together. I just use 2. We just pin it down. And here we go. I have a very simple sewing machine, but it does the work. And make sure this is up. And here we go. Get our stitch down. Always try to have like a centimeter for the seaming space. So let's start the sewing process. I have the back stitch. Remember to back stitch so your thread doesn't come out. And you're just gonna basically just guide the fabric on its own. We get to the end, I'm gonna back stitch. And we're gonna cut. And now we're gonna do same thing with the same side. So we're gonna sew both sides together. Remember, leave enough room for your seam allowance. And here we go again. Back stitch. And just let the machine do the work. All you have to do is guide it. So now we have both sides sewn. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna open it. Open it. And then that's where you're gonna see what looks like a mask. We're gonna put both of them together like this or so, see? And like I said, you can use the pins to keep them together. So I'm gonna use maybe a couple of pins. Make sure your middles meet. Make sure they meet. So I'm gonna put a pin just to keep it together. There, and a pin on this side. All right, so you see everything's together here. We're gonna do the same with the bottom. Also, please make sure that your middles meet. All right. So now that our pins are in place, we're gonna just iron it just so when we start sewing back up, everything will be lined up correctly. So just a quick iron again. So now that we ironed it, we're gonna start the sewing process. So just make sure you iron the top all the way down. You're gonna sew this. You're gonna sew through the middle, but then you're gonna leave maybe like 3 inches not sewn in because we have to turn the mask inside out, okay? So just remember, sew the top, sew this part right here and leave like 3 inches. So now that we finished sewing the mask, remember with the little hole I told you to leave open? We're gonna pull our mask inside out. So, then we're gonna use our iron so we can flatten it out, so it could be easier to sew again. I'm gonna put this in just so I can push everything out. You know, push everything out, all the corners. Make sure you have everything. You can use a pencil, you don't need something like that. So now we have our mask there. We're gonna grab the sewing machine, the iron. Just gonna iron it out just to make sure it won't be so bulky. So now that we have our fabric ironed out, we have to close this. So just bring it inward. You're gonna bring it inward like this, push it in, and then you're gonna sew that so we can close it. You're gonna sew all around the mask. So now that you folded in the edges of the mask, just give it a quick iron just so we can start sewing the split. So now we'll move this out of the way and we're gonna sew all around the mask. Don't sew this is already closed. So we're just gonna sew the top and we're gonna sew the bottom, okay? So now we're almost done with our mask, but we need our elastic string. So I cut it at 7.5 inches, I cut it. So we're gonna grab our mask and we're gonna put our string and we're gonna fold the edge. We're gonna fold it in. You grab your trusty iron again and just, it'll be easier for whenever you start sewing. And then put it under your machine. And here we go. And anybody can sew this. I did not know how to sew. I learned through watching YouTube videos. So if you've never sewn before, you can do it. So now that we put both of our elastic strings, then we're just gonna tie them together. Tie them together. I always cut the edges out. Push it in. Yeah, that. Same thing here. Open it. And there is your face mask. I hope you enjoyed this video and stay safe, everybody.